Hello and welcome to the Magical Midlife Podcast, where you get a refreshing, uplifting and optimistic perspective on life in your 40s and 50s. I'm your host, Lindsay de Swart, and I'm delighted that you've joined us here today, so let's jump right in. Hey, welcome to the show today. Today I am delighted to be interviewing Kim Martin, who is a Generation X health coach. And so we talk about her journey through perimenopause, through menopause, and through nutrition changes that she made. And also she's got some fantastic advice for us with nutrition changes, simple changes that we can make. So I hope you enjoy the show today. It's a delight to have Kim on the Magical Midlife today. Hi, Kim. How are you doing?
Oh, hi, Lindsay. I am doing really well. How are you doing?
I am awesome, thank you, and very excited about our conversation today.
Oh, so am I. Thank you very much for having me on your show.
You are so welcome. I know it's going to be a good show, and I know that you're going to be able to share lots of useful advice that I know I need, and I'm fairly sure that other people need it too. But first of all, before we get into all of that really good stuff, I would love to know more about you. So can you tell us a little bit about you, and then we'll move into your journey as to how you end up doing what you're doing today?
Okay, that sounds good. So my name's Kim, and I am a certified health coach. So I live in Ottawa with my family. So those of you who aren't from Canada might not know Ottawa is the capital city of Canada. So I did grow up in Ottawa. I was born in Montreal, grew up in Ottawa. I left for close to 20 years, lived on Vancouver Island with my first husband. Our kids were born there. And then I moved back here about 7 years ago. So that was after my divorce. So packed up the car and the dog and we drove across the country. So that was an adventure in itself.
Oh my goodness. How long does that actually take to drive across Canada?
It took us, we stopped every night.
Yeah.
And it took us, I want to say, I can't remember now if it was 6 nights with 7 days or 5 nights.
Wow.
I mean, we didn't stop and do a lot of sightseeing along the way. We did a few stops but no, we mostly just drove. We would drive between 8, 10, maybe 12 hours in a day, depending on how far we wanted to get. And then just stopped and sort of took in the sights of the town that we stopped in for the night. And then we'd carry on the next day. But no, it was quite an adventure.
I bet it was. My goodness. Cool. And then so you come back here or back to Ottawa anyway, and then tell us more about what's happened since.
Okay. So came back to Ottawa. I'd reconnected with an old friend and who lived in Toronto at the time. We ended up getting together. So we got married in 2017. So now, he and I and my 2 kids live together in our house here in Ottawa. So, and actually that's a funny story because it was someone that I knew when I was a teenager. We actually went on one date back in 1987 and my mother remembered him because he came to the house to pick me up. I was 18 years old. And he took me to the National Arts Center to see Handel's Messiah at Christmas time. And my mother was a big theater or arts and culture buff. And so that impressed the heck out of her. So all those years later, when I said, oh, well, hey, do you remember this fella? She goes, oh, I do. He was so nice. I really liked him, even though she met him one time.
Yeah, fair enough.
But anyways, through the power of Facebook, we, reconnected and, the rest is history, I guess. So.
Oh, that's such a cool story.
Yeah. So, but without Facebook or social media, social media has its ups and downs, but this story ended up really happily for both of us. So.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love that. Yeah. Put a smile on my face all day long now.
Well, good. That's cool. Yeah. So I moved here and I had given up a 17-year career. I worked 17 years in a nonprofit organization on Vancouver Island in Duncan, BC. It was a community development and business development organization. So we helped small businesses get started. We participated in lots of community projects. I started there in 1998 as a community economic development intern. And then I had several jobs there throughout the 17 years I was there. And then when I left in 2015, I was a program manager. So I did a lot of proposal writing, funding proposals for our organization and other nonprofit organizations in the community to get community projects up and running. So that was an interesting career. But when I moved back here, I kind of thought, I'll just get a government job because, I have all this experience from, working in nonprofit, but I don't speak French, and living in Ottawa and trying to get a government job, being bilingual is really not essential, but it's really preferred. So I ended up taking over a friend of mine. She was giving up her house cleaning business. So I ended up taking that on. So I did house cleaning for a few years. And that was kind of my first foray into being self-employed. And I really liked it. I didn't especially like cleaning houses. I didn't mind the work. It was physical work and I got my exercise in that way. But I liked being able to be there when the kids left for school in the morning, be there when they got home after school. And that was my first taste of being self-employed. And then in 2017, and this is where my life kind of started to change. So in 2017, I wasn't married yet to my husband. We had everything planned for May of 2017, but he got sick in February and ended up in the hospital, and ended up with open heart surgery. And so he was in the hospital for a month. Yeah, he ended up with it's called endocarditis, which it's just an infection that hit his aortic valve and just basically destroyed his aortic valve. So by the time he felt really sick, got him to the hospital. Next day, they did open heart surgery and replaced his valve. So he ended up being in the hospital close to a month. I suggested we postpone the wedding, which was supposed to be in May, because he was in the hospital for pretty much March. But he needed to recover and get his strength back and everything. But he said, no, we've planned this. Let's go ahead and do it. Turns out that was the right decision, because that was end of May. We got married. By the end of June, I got really sick. And it took me about 2 weeks before I went to the hospital. And then I ended up with surgery and stayed in the hospital for 10 days. And then a week after I got out of the hospital, my mother died, just unexpectedly died. I don't know if she'd had food poisoning or picked up a virus. My sister had talked to her one morning and my mom had said, "Oh, I've been in the bathroom all night. I haven't, I don't know what's going on." The next day, she wasn't answering her phone. So I went over to check on her and there she was in her bed. So those
my goodness,
3 things happened in the span of about 5 months, all these health related things. And my mom, I should say, she was 76, but very active, seemingly healthy. They figure it was maybe a heart attack or something related to being dehydrated, because she'd been vomiting and everything for a while. But so those 3 things, those 3 kind of major things happened in the span of 5 months. And I started thinking first, my mom was healthy. I thought I'd been healthy. My husband had been pretty healthy. He's got some medical issues that are genetic. But I thought, there's so many things that can happen to us that are outside of our control. And what are the things that I can do that are within my control to ensure as much as possible that I stay healthy and my family stays healthy? So that's how I started to think about studying nutrition. So I studied nutrition first and then fitness. And then I did some overall health coaching. And I'm actually taking a certification right now for sleep, stress management, and recovery. So pretty soon that will be added to my list of credentials. But yeah, it was really a life-changing or an eye-opening 5 months that led me into this career change.
Absolutely. So when you said you started learning about nutrition, in what context or what made it different? Because, for anybody, there's the eat your 5 or however many the number is now vegetables per day, and you should eat more vegetables and cut down red meat, and high fat's not great for you. But so there's kind of the standard advice. But when you learned about nutrition, what did it what did it teach you, or what did it change about what you did? Because you thought you were leading a healthy life anyway.
Well, I thought I'd been leading a healthy life because I I had been a runner for a number of years.
Right.
That I had kind of scaled back on a little bit because I found I couldn't do the distances that I like to do. But I'd never really done any kind of strength training. I'd wanted to get in good shape, look good in my wedding dress. So, I hired a personal trainer. I counted my calories. I even counted my macros. But I wasn't, at that point, I wasn't focusing on the quality of my food. It was just, like I knew I could have, from macros, I knew I could have like so many carbs in a day. So I would save up some carbs for the nighttime so I could have my wine because, wine is carbs, right? And, so like I was only looking at like how everything fit into my allowances versus what the quality of those calories really were. So when I started to study nutrition, I was studying the science of nutrition, like why the quality of our calories matter, the kinds of foods we eat, how they interact with each other, why whole foods are better than processed foods, even if they have like say the same amount of same grams of protein or the same grams of carbs, that kind of thing. And so just how everything works together within your body. And so as far as nutrition and fitness and total health goes, like if you're only going to focus on one, I would say it'd be nutrition because, what you eat really affects just about everything else and affects your health. If you eat well, you have a much better chance of being healthy. You feed your body with the nutrition that it needs. It will perform better for you. You'll sleep better. You'll have more energy to do the things. You might want to exercise more. You'll probably sleep better. You'll probably manage your stress better. All that kind of stuff. But also I didn't really realize at the time when I was starting to go through this and maybe why it's a reason why I got sick in the first place, besides all the stress in my life.
Yeah.
But the stress I probably could have managed better if I was eating better, if I was exercising a little bit better, exercising for, strength and endurance and all that versus just, I want to look nice in my wedding dress.
Yeah.
The way I thought about food and fitness and everything else really changed in that time. But I also didn't realize till a little bit later that I was also going through perimenopause. Like when I look back, I'd probably started perimenopause even in my late 30s.
Right.
I had my last baby when I was 34. She was actually born on my 34th birthday. But and then after she was born, I kept waiting for my period to get back to normal, even though I didn't really know what that was for me, because before my first baby, I'd been on birth control basically up until the time I got pregnant. And then baby number 2 came, I was pregnant when baby number 1 was about 16 months old. I was still breastfeeding her. So I didn't know what normal for my period was, but it was, like even in my late 30s into early 40s, it was, that heavy, like endless periods. And so that started and, anyways, there's lots of examples of things that had happened that were related to perimenopause, although my doctor never said anything about it. They just treated symptoms and even though looking back,
honestly, I hear it all the time from everybody. It's like, well, I went for help, but nobody knew what to say. Nobody knew what help to give me. Oh my goodness. Thank God we're waking up to our own bodies.
Oh, I know. And I'm glad we're talking about it now too, because when I only found out I was in perimenopause just by Googling symptoms. And then this word kept coming up and I'm like, okay, I guess that's what's happening to me. But at the time, when I look back, I think, oh, my doctor, because it was a woman doctor and she was slightly older than me. So like looking back, I think, was she not going through any of this either? Or maybe she was and the dots weren't connecting for her either. I don't know.
Isn't that amazing? So with the nutrition, there's definitely the quality of the food. And the phrase that's going through my head is my fitness trainer for many, many years. And she always says you can't exercise your way out of a bad diet.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Oh God, that's the worst news for me because I've always exercised and I've always, run marathons, all sorts of things. And I've always said, I guess I always thought I was eating quite healthily, but I've always had too much sugar in my diet without question. And I guess the symptoms of perimenopause and menopause, that's the real kicker for me, is like, oh goodness, I can't exercise my way out of a bad diet. Damn. So
No,
tell
I
me
know.
more.
Well,
What should I be doing?
well, yeah. Well, I was the same as you. You know, I was a runner for many years, and I liked running, but I used to say too, I run because I love to eat. You know, but it wasn't just that I love to eat. I love to eat the things that I probably shouldn't have been eating, or too much of the things that I shouldn't have been eating. I love my sugar. I love my treats, right? And I still do. But I find when I do indulge in them now, you know, because I'm a firm believer of the 80-20 rule, but when I use my 20% to eat, you know, the package of Oreos, like, you know, my hot flashes flare up. I feel like garbage. I really feel the effects of it. And sometimes even as I'm enjoying that Oreo, I think, oh, I shouldn't be doing this because it's not going to be worth it.
Yeah.
But so no, it's absolutely true. You can't outrun a bad diet. You know, you've heard abs are made in the kitchen. There's all that stuff. I mean, because you can exercise, you can get yourself really strong, but if you're not eating the foods to support your strength and to support everything else, you're not going to reveal those abs. You're not going to feel like you want to get out there and run that marathon, or, you know, lift those weights or anything else. Mm-hmm. But the other thing that I've been learning as far as exercise goes for, you know, women our age and our stage of life, it's how we exercise needs to change. I mean, we can't go for those, you know, half marathon length runs anymore, because that actually does, you know, so much harm to your body that it didn't seem to do back when we were, you know, before we were in perimenopause. You know, like
I was going to say, it took me so long to recover from my last one. And I actually went to a naturopath and just went, what is going on? You know, and I just, to be fair to Jill Ann, who's also my naturopath, but was one of my first guests on the podcast, when she kept saying about sort of menopause symptoms, perimenopause, I mean, I just rolled my eyes and I was like, oh God, not this. What is this anyway? And actually realized that it would make such a difference if I really listened and did something with it.
No, I know. Well, there's a reason that they tell us some things, but also when you think, you know, some doctors don't know much about menopause or perimenopause at all, you think, well, the ones that are talking about it a little bit, like, are they even giving me the right advice, or should I listen? Like, you know, like, it's a lot of self-discovery too, because, you know, just with everything else, I mean, your experience of perimenopause or menopause is going to be different from mine. We might have some of the same symptoms, but how you feel is going to be different from me. So as with anything else, you kind of have to do trial and error as to what works for you, for the food, for the exercise, for, you know, your methods of stress management too, because I mean, really that's the kicker for women in menopause or in a stage of menopause. I'm on the other side of it now. Like I'm postmenopausal now, like full blown. But I still get some symptoms, and I feel like 1,000% better than I did on my worst perimenopause days, because I would never want to go through that again. But as far as like exercise goes, like we can't have those marathon sessions of exercise like we used to, because it's too much stress on our body. I mean, exercise itself is stress, you know, and then there is like distress and eustress, and the eustress is the good stress. But when we exercise for too long, like, so when it sort of goes past that half hour, 40 minutes even, then it starts to become too stressful on our bodies. And then that's when, you know, like we all know the role cortisol plays in our, you know, in our, you know, like it'll settle in our bellies and it'll, you know, make us not deal with things the way that we should be dealing with them. And so when you exercise for longer than that half hour, 40 minutes, and then that's when it starts to become not beneficial for us. So I do still run periodically, but I do like a 20-minute run or a half hour run. I used to think back when I was training for my half marathons or even 10 marathons, 10K marathon or 10K races, I used to think, oh, like I'm not going to bother going out for running a 5K because it's not worth it. It's less than half an hour. Like, but that's not going to do anything. But now, like that seems to be the sweet spot for me. So actually, I'm slower than I used to be.
So when you were running the 5Ks is your optimal?
Yeah. So now I find like the 5K or even like, well, just a half hour running, and I don't quite get to 5K now. So, but 5K is sort of and I can enjoy it. And it's a nice quick run. It's a nice quick exercise, but you also, in our stage of life, we don't want to be doing too much cardio as well. We obviously need our cardio exercise during the week. It's 150 minutes a week of elevated heart rate. But for women our age, we need to focus more on the strength training. And so a lot of women don't want to do that. They hear strength training and they think bulk up like a man, which, couldn't be further from the truth. It's just not possible. But it is something that we need to do. So whether you like to go to the gym and lift weights, or, even just do body weight resistance kind of exercises, it's important that women our age start or continue doing these, because as part of menopause and our estrogen drops in menopause, it really affects a lot of systems in the woman's body, obviously, but it really affects our bone density. Men lose bone density as well as they get older, but the drop in estrogen really sort of drops our bone density. So when you start losing bone density, you can build it up a little bit, but it's much easier to maintain what you've got rather than try and build it up a little bit more. So the strength training, really, it's to build your muscles, but also it puts the pressure, or like the muscles kind of pulling on the bones, make the bones a little bit stronger. So you maintain your muscle strength, you maintain your bone strength. So if you fall, you have less of a chance of breaking a hip or breaking a leg as you get older, which is, a real worry, a real risk actually for people as they age over 50. So men and women, but women especially, the estrogen, losing the protective benefits of estrogen really impacts a lot of systems in our body, not just our bones, but our brains as well. There is that link now between a drop in estrogen and Alzheimer's for women, and which I guess they're finding is a reason that women tend to have Alzheimer's more often than men. And it's
really okay. That I wasn't aware of.
Yeah. So it's fairly new studies, but the thing is with a lot of medical studies, and I'm sure you know this too, but they've all been done on men, just like, other, men and boys is when like all these health studies are done on. And so all the symptoms, all the everything else, it's the symptoms that are showing up in men, but women can have the same things, but they show symptoms differently.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, even for things like autism, and I know this because one of my daughters has autism, and when she was younger, I used to look at her and like listen to her, and I think, oh, I almost think she's somewhere on the autism spectrum. And, a couple of times I would bring it up with doctors and they say, no, she doesn't, because, this, and this. But when you look at symptoms of autism in children, the studies have all been done on boys, and the symptoms present differently in boys than they do in girls. And which is why that boys seem to have are on the autism spectrum more than girls. But you'll find that later on, so late teens, early 20s, like young women, my oldest daughter, she's 20 now, and she's just, she was officially diagnosed just a couple of years ago. But that's why women, young women, and even, middle-aged women will go and get themselves tested now and find that, yes, they do fall on the spectrum. So this goes, for all kinds of health studies. And so when you think of the Alzheimer studies, that, they probably have been done on men all these years, but now when they're starting to do some studies on women, and then they're finding that the drop in estrogen sort of correlates to the Alzheimer's. So, I mean, there's lots of studies, that need to be done to confirm all of this stuff. But it's just one of those things that, the curse of being a woman, and, you drop your estrogen and all these other things can happen to you. But, in the past, nobody really knew about it because it wasn't studied, because we're women,
Oh my goodness. This is just like, oh, come on. And of course, one wouldn't, I certainly didn't assume that all the medical testing is done on men or boys, because that seems absolutely ridiculous. And I just wasn't aware of it.
Yeah, no, it does. Yeah, no, if you look, I mean, there's, like some studies that have been done on women for, particular issues that only affect women, but there's not a lot of studies. It's just, when you go back and look at medical studies, it's mostly conducted on men. And so all the symptoms and all the information that they put together, it's mostly, I mean, not 100%, but mostly it's how it affects men. So if an issue affects a woman, the symptoms may show up differently, and
Yeah, for
and
sure.
so it's not they don't have the same I guess classifications, like with the autism thing. So
that's totally logical as to why nobody knows anything or nobody knew anything about menopause, is because it's never been really researched.
Yeah,
which is no surprise to us now.
Oh, it's no surprise to us now, and I'm glad that we are talking about it. And doing research about it now. Like, I don't know if there's official, research going on right now, but it's just, at least we are talking about it, because honestly, with menopause, I'd heard about it. I thought, okay, there's hot flashes, and you stop getting your period. Like, I like, honestly, I kind of thought that's what happened. My own mother never talked about it. And I'm sure she never talked about it with her mother. I know my mom was on hormone therapy for a number of years. And then she said that even when she went off it, she had no symptoms. I mean, I think she was in her late 60s when she finally went off it, but she said she never had hot flashes, like nothing happened. So I couldn't even talk to her about her experience with menopause, because she never really went through it. I don't even know why she started with the hormone therapy in the first place, if she was getting symptoms, but she was on it for probably from 50 till close to 70 anyways. So I couldn't talk to her about it.
What a changing world we're in now. And there are certain things that I'm glad that it's a changing world now.
Yes.
Yeah. So if I may, can I pick your brains about like nutrition, major nutrition building blocks? Found you through following you on Instagram. So I know what sort of advice you post, but can you share some of those tips with us if you're happy to here? And then at the end, we'll talk about your Instagram so that anybody can follow you there, because it's great, simple building blocks and great education on there. So I love it.
Okay, perfect. So as far as nutrition goes, unfortunately, we do have to give up, the processed stuff. I mean, it's really, I'm not going to say it's as simple as that, but that's a really simple starting point. So if you want to improve your nutrition, don't worry about calories, don't worry about macros, don't worry about, carbs, don't worry about anything like that. Don't eliminate a food group. Don't do anything like that. If you're going to eliminate anything, eliminate the processed foods. And what I usually start with is just, instead of eliminating stuff, start adding things. So instead of having some potato chips or something, like if you're hungry and you want a snack and your go-to snack is potato chips, like have an apple first, or have something else that's a whole food.
Okay.
Because whole foods, actually, they're not just like carbs and calories or proteins. I mean, there's like so much that goes into a whole food, and the vitamins, the minerals, the phytonutrients, everything, they're all meant to work together. So it's not just that you're eating the carbs, or anything like that. So my advice to, when you're starting out, just not replace, but add in. I never like to say to people, like, stop eating or replace stuff, like just add in. And then, so eventually your better eating habits will sort of crowd out your not so good eating habits. But,
so whole grains, I always think about whole grains as being like whole wheat bread. I always think about whole grains as being whole wheat bread, brown rice, maybe brown pasta rather than white pasta. But what more is it than that? Because that's tiny. That's just a tiny section, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I mean, whole grains, it's like your oats and your quinoa and bulgur, farro. There's all kinds of grains out there. They're not bad. They're not. A lot of people like to go gluten-free, which is like really only about 10% of the population actually has celiac disease, which they can't have gluten. And then there's a small percentage of people that actually have a sensitivity to gluten. So people who go gluten-free, they think it's a health choice, but unless you actually have a condition where you can't have it, it's not a health choice. It's just a choice.
Okay. It's a deprivation choice.
You don't have, yeah. So, yeah. So, I mean, you don't have to eat gluten, and you can still be healthy, and you can still have you can still have your whole grains.
Right.
You can have your quinoa, oats. Oats do have an enzyme in there that's similar to gluten. So some people that actually can't have gluten also can't have this enzyme that's in oats. But for the most part, oats are technically gluten-free. So you can eat a variety of things. You just have to, but if you are eating gluten-free, just make sure that, if you're buying your bread, it is gluten-free. But for the most part, I mean, if you just eat a variety of whole grains, I mean, it's good. For whatever you eat, like whether it's, vegetables or whole grains or fruits or, anything, variety is key so that you get that variety of nutrients and the phytonutrients. They say eat the rainbow. I find when I am talking to clients, when I'm talking to people about food, it almost sounds simple because it's going back to the basics, really, like eat the rainbow, like eat,
it almost sounds simple because it is simple.
Well, it is simple,
but
at the same time, it's not. I mean, like everybody has a different idea of what they think good nutrition is.
Fair enough.
And then there's also, there's allergies and there's, like sensitivities and there's, but all that aside, so, and when I put posts out on social media or when I talk about it, I'm always talking like generally speaking, not if you have a specific condition that you can't eat or you shouldn't eat a particular thing. So
you're really not a fan of diets, are you?
Oh my goodness. No, I don't.
I love that
I don't
response.
believe in diets. No, I don't believe in diets. I mean, diets are, and I went to high school in the 80s. Like I grew up in the 80s and, so there was all the diets and there was all the, fat was bad. I grew up with margarine instead of butter because margarine was supposed to be back then. It was, better for you. And, it was fat-free and low-fat everything. And of course, now we know that that's not good to go that. So even sometimes I have a hard time in my brain. It's the way that I grew up and the way that, like I'm thinking, okay, so there's this diet, that diet, but no diets. I am not a fan of diets, mostly because they're restrictive and they don't work in the long term. If you do go on a diet, make sure that, you're supervised by a doctor and there's a reason to do it. But for most of us, there's no reason to actually diet. We might want to drop a few pounds for some reason, but I'm also, how do I say this? So I'm also not a fan of losing weight just so you can fit into a size 8 or 6 or whatever. And maybe it's because I'm 52 years old and I'm not 18 anymore. And so I care more about how I feel and how strong I am rather than how I look in a bikini. I mean, everybody likes to look good in a bikini, but it's more about what my body can do for me now, and which is what I'm trying to get across to other people as well. So I'm not a fan of diets, especially if it's, somebody wants to lose a bunch of weight. I'm more a fan of changing your diet so that it's something that, like changing one habit at a time, making out one swap at a time, just one thing at a time. So it becomes part of your daily habits and it's just something that you're going to do for the rest of your life. And that's the reason I'm not a fan of diets, because there's no diet out there that you would want to do for the rest of your life. I've known people who do keto and they say that that's how they're going to eat for the rest of their life. And I have my own thoughts about keto, but if you think it works for you and your doctor's on board with it and, you're making sure you're getting all your nutrients, go for it. As long as you think that you're going to maintain it for the rest of your life, because there's no point in doing anything that's going to make you lose weight or feel a certain way if you're not going to carry on with that. Then that's the big reason that I don't like diets, because people tend to go on them just to lose a certain amount of weight. And then once they're done, then they go back to the way they were eating. They gain the weight back, usually plus a little bit more. And then they're worse off than when they started. So it's just, change your eating habits one by one. Go for it if you want to lose weight. And this is where I have a problem when I do my marketing and stuff, because I'm not about weight loss. I'm about getting healthy. And sometimes that means losing some weight, but that's not what I'm about. And, I'm just about eating healthy, eating in a way so that your body gets the nourishment that it needs to, get through your daily activities, but, and then some. So not, you don't want to go to work.
One question I have, and I'm asking it because I have absolutely no idea. So apologies for anybody listening if it's a really simplistic question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. With yo-yo dieting, which if you're going to diet, I think people generally yo-yo diet. You don't just do one diet in your whole life, as you say, because very rarely do people stick to it. What effect does yo-yo dieting have on your hormones? Does it have any long-term effect?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
If they have a long-term effect on your hormones. It can have a long-term effect on your metabolism, because if you do a lot of yo-yo dieting, and especially if you spend a lot of time, restricting your calories, then you can do a lot of damage to your metabolism that can take a lot of years to get it back to where it should be.
Right.
So, if you lose a lot of weight and you're really restricted and then you sort of eat normally, you're going to end up gaining more weight because you've damaged your metabolism. And it takes a lot of work with, a nutritionist or a registered dietitian to get you back on track so that you're eating or at a level of calories and a level of food quality so that you're actually helping your body. And then you get your body back to a metabolism level that works for you. Because if your body gets used to, like, the body is great at keeping itself alive, and so whatever you do to it, it's going to change whatever it has to just to keep itself alive. And so if it has to lower its metabolism, and then you give it a little bit more, it's like, haha, you're not tricking me into this again. So I'm going to keep running at this metabolism. So it's going to make you pack on some extra weight because it's expecting you to deprive it again, right? So like it sort of goes up and down. So you have to do a lot of sort of restorative work with a nutritionist or a dietitian to help you get back on track. So, and as far as the hormones go, I'm not sure if the yo-yo dieting actually affects the hormones, but but your metabolism, we've all heard our metabolism slows down as we age, and they find they're finding that that's not really the case. That it kind of stays stable between sort of early 20s until 60. Your metabolism does start to slow down a little bit at 60, not majorly, but I think what it is, it's just people as they get a little bit older and a little bit sedentary, their metabolism slows down because they slow down, right? It's not necessarily because you're older. It's just as you're older and you tend to slow down, the metabolism.
Okay, that is fantastic. So fantastic to know, because I have chosen never to buy into that. And people go, oh, well, I'm older, I've put the weight on, my metabolism slowed down, blah, blah, blah. And I have absolutely chosen to say, you know what? If I choose not to believe that, then it's not my truth. So if I'm living healthily, then I can still maintain a healthy metabolism. So the fact that you've said that makes me so damn happy.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. This is when I first read that paper, and I was just like, because I was kind of the same way as you. I'm like, well, why does it have to slow down? Like, if I'm not slowing down and it's still like I'm kind of eating the way I've been eating and exercise, like I'm not, like slowly gaining weight, or like even when I was going through perimenopause and everything, I never gained weight. I gained a couple of pounds, depending on what I was doing or not doing at the time. But, it's not even in perimenopause that your metabolism starts to slow down. It's when you're going through menopause,
that changes
where you carry your fat. Where women carry, when we're in our childbearing years, it's lower down and then it kind of moves up a little bit. So that's why a lot of women find it all of a sudden they have a belly when they're in perimenopause and going through menopause. And I was one of those people. Like my weight didn't really change, but I thought, like, where did this extra layer come from on my belly? But I have found that since I'm on the other side and postmenopausal now, I don't have as much of a belly as I did before. So, like I said earlier, like I only started studying all this stuff sort of when I was mid 40s even, and I'm only 52 now. So maybe I'm just making better food choices now, and that's helping with the belly. But it was almost magical once I hit post-menopause. I thought, oh, like my belly is not as big, or didn't seem as pudgy as it was. But like I said, I was one of those women, I didn't really gain weight. It's just
okay. So I'm conscious of time, because I always try and keep my podcast to a certain time that people can do. Driving there 20 minutes, driving back 20 minutes, the whole show. So we need to wind it up, right? How can people find you? Because as I say, I love the advice you give on Instagram. I love it. It's well delivered. It's easy to digest. Excuse the pun. And so I'd love for people to be able to find you and follow you. So where can they find you?
Okay, well, on Instagram, it's just at Kim Martin Nutrition Coach on Instagram. And then I do have a website that's kimberlymartin.ca. And Kimberly is spelled with an L-E-Y.
Because my mom wanted to. That is awesome. So. Well, Kim, thank you so much. It's been wonderful to talk to you. I'm glad that we've connected beyond just Instagram chatting, which has been going on a while. And so grateful that you're here today and all the advice you shared. Thank you.
Well, I hope it was helpful, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak with you today and to be on your podcast. So I'm looking forward to listening to the episode when it airs.
What did you think of the show today? If you've enjoyed it, please leave a review on whatever podcast platform that you're listening on. Also, you can come and join us at the Facebook group for The Magical Midlife. And on Instagram, if you're on Instagram, I'm under Lindsay de Swart, where you will find the podcast being released there every Wednesday. I really look forward to seeing you there and hearing your comments and any questions. And please come over to the Instagram account or to the Facebook group, where you will find downloads and free gifts to help you lead your most magical midlife. See you there.